everyone. This is episode 26 of the Dresden Files podcast, member of the Broken Jars Network, and today we're going to talk about vampires. But first, I have to say we are missing Alex, unfortunately, because of conflicting issues. But today we also have a small Broken Jars special guest, which is another third of the podcast High Fantasy. So Colin is my primary beta reader and friend that is joining the podcasting world. Say hi.
Whoa, hey everybody.
So, as we do with every guest, Colin, tell us your favorite three books of the Dresden Files and your favorite character.
All right. Favorite books. Death Masks, because it introduces us to the Denarians, and I just enjoy that in general. Deadbeat, because Sue. And Cold Days for giving us the bigger picture and introducing the real threat of the outsiders.
Yeah, that Cold Days is really fun. Your favorite character?
Eldest Gruff.
Yes!
He's too much fun.
Oh, I love him.
For a guy who's been in two scenes in the entire series, he definitely hits above his weight class, so...
That's the summation of his character as a...
I'm waiting for someone to say Cat Sith, because he's only in one book and like 5 scenes maybe, but everyone feels so sorry about him.
I like Cat Sith too.
Yeah, he's fun.
Pray thee with sprinkles on top. All this stuff, that's so good.
Yeah. So we do have some news today, sort of. See, Jim has finished the Lucio point of view short story, and he has named it A Fistful of Warlocks. It's going to be in David Boop's Old West anthology called Straight Outta Tombstone. There is no release date yet.
Spoiler alert, something Jim actually don't want you to know. I thought, like, so just mute if you don't, or skip if you don't want to hear this. Because I don't know, but I want to know, so I want to ask, did anyone catch... Jim had apparently said who the adversary is in that book, but he was not supposed to say. And then the Reddit thread got edited. Did anyone see it?
I didn't. What? I don't know.
If only there was some kind of Wayback Machine or something on the internet where you could see things like that.
Yeah, so someone needs to do that and then report back.
This is the first time hearing about it, so put it in the Slack if you know where the original post is, and maybe I'll go see what I can dig up.
All right.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we don't know the release date of that yet, but he has done another thing that will be out. I think it was the day one from Butter's point of view that will be out in November, and something else that he has contributed to, which will be out in 2017 sometime. There are signed copies of Small Favor available from Subterranean Press. Limited copies. I think there's also some cool Dust Jacket stuff. And he is appearing, like right now, at the Myth and Legend Con in Denver, and he's doing like 11 panels, so I'm hoping we can get a bunch of interesting stuff from that too. So now on to vampires.
I wish Subterranean Press was cheaper. They're so beautiful.
Yeah. Real quick, I think on the subreddit there is at least one new kind of Q&A that's been posted. I saved it, but I haven't had the chance to watch it yet, so I'm sure we are getting at least new, talks and that sort of thing, if not new info.
Yeah, I mean, 11 panels about all sorts of things. It's going to get something fun. So the subject for today was kind of a few weeks in the making, but it's like I didn't have to do any of the work because there's this amazing guy called Wizard Nelson behind the scenes that's been doing a bunch of stuff, and he deserves a fucking medal because I love people who don't do the work for me. It's awesome. And
you love people who don't do the work for you?
I love people who do the work. Fuck you, Andres.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't like people who don't do work. So let's talk about vampires. There's apparently, he said at some point, there's actually 7 courts out there, but we only get to see a few. Yeah.
Is there a reference on that? I've never heard that.
Wizard Nelson did it. You can see it in Trello.
Yeah, I think it's from an old word of Jim, and then it kind of gets ignored because if you're not going to flesh it out, what else are you going to do with it? So.
Yeah, but like the specific thing said that they're like mosquito-sized, so who cares? Like the remnants of the Red Court, possibly rumored out there, but like,
I'm pretty
cares?
sure there's still some Red Court left, but not a lot.
Yeah, but they're worthless. Who cares about them? But so like the ones that we do see, the main 4 let's talk about them. Let's start with the Red Court because we already are. Justin got him to say that they were based on the From Dusk Till Dawn movie. I still haven't seen that,
Yeah.
but they're bat-like things with flesh masks and drink blood, and they're centered in South America. Yeah.
I can't believe I didn't pick up on that myself, by the way. That's so obvious now when you think about it.
Right. It was one of those where for me it was an epiphany, but maybe for a lot of other people they already knew. But I've been reading them for about 3 years. I've been on the subreddit for a year or two, and nobody's ever brought it up. And so I'm like, let's freaking do a show, man.
I've never seen it either, about anything about it until you mentioned it. I was like, and I was like, holy shit, that makes so much sense.
Personally, I find it comforting that he admitted he just straight stole something from a movie because I worry about stealing things all the time in my writing, but he got away with it. Yay!
If you steal from one source, it's plagiarism. If you steal from a lot of sources, it's research.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the rule of thumb. So,
According to George R. R. Martin, yes.
I mean, it's relatively true.
Uh-huh. And there's a quote that of basically what Jim said, the same thing. You just go look at all of the research of vampires and then blend it all together. He said way back when he was on the Laurel K. Hamilton forums of he has 47 different varieties of vampires that blend together like Baskin Robbins flavors. It's awesome. So the Red Court, their abilities, they have things like they can do mesmerizing things with eyes and playing with your memory. They can change flesh masks as they get older or more powerful, and they have narcotic drool, which I will never stop laughing at the phrase of. And according to Dresden, he says that they're not able to go through thresholds without an invitation, which is different than the other courts.
I mean,
Can whites?
Whites can go through without an invitation, yeah.
right.
Yes.
I think they're basically like wizards when that happens. They leave all of their power behind, and that's why they actually talk about it a little bit more in detail in Ghost Story. It's not Madeline. Who's the other? Who's the white court that shows up?
Felicia. She never shows up again.
Okay. Well, I mean, so
for
far.
now.
So far.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
so far, but...
Seems like he introduced a couple new characters there, probably for a reason.
Yeah, and both of them at the same time, actually. We need to see everything happening going on. Also, I found it weird that Felicia had a British accent. But let's keep going on with Reds for a little bit. What are they susceptible against? Because just trying to think, what is the main thing that goes against them? And it seemed to be sunlight, and I think symbols of faith, but I couldn't remember for sure, and I can't think of anything
symbol of faith works.
Okay.
Right. Well, yeah, because Dresden uses it against Bianca. He uses both against Bianca in Stormfront. So right up, the book that everybody hates that has no valid information for the rest of the series, ironically, has the most information about Bianca next to, book 3.
Yeah,
so
there's still some weird hints that have never been tied up in Stormfront, and I wonder if he had purpose.
Like what?
There's a woman that tells him to get up because he's tired and go fight the bad guy at the end, but we don't know who he is. She is.
Okay. I would assume Mom, but okay.
Or Mom. Or
That's,
Leah.
that's what I assumed. But
Or
But
Leah,
if that's the hint, maybe we're being misled, and it just drives me crazy that we don't know. And that's happened a couple of other times in the series, too.
I think if stuff like that drives you crazy, you're reading the wrong book series.
No, it drives me crazy in a good way. Just like I said,
Right.
it hurts in the right way.
Right. Like maybe it's the same person who fixed Little Chicago. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. Maybe.
Man,
Talk about shit that
I
still
wanna
hasn't been.
know.
Right.
Can I just know?
I think
So- Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the Reds are the closest to typical vampires next to the Blacks.
Yeah.
Right.
I think he probably
And-
didn't have enough to flesh them out and just stole things from typical vampire folklore.
Well, maybe, but I mean, there's a lot of different things that could explain it, but that's definitely what I was going to say, is that the Reds and the Blacks have a lot in common. The main differentiating feature is that the Blacks are already dead. They're actually dead, as opposed to just kind of undead or whatever you want to call. Like the Red Court are more demonic, whereas the
Yeah.
Black Court are more like akin to ghouls and zombies and other revenant type Walking Dead type of creatures. And so as a result, the blacks are a lot effing harder to kill because they're already dead, whereas the reds are comparatively easy to kill, like a lot of current vampire lore where you just hit them with sunlight or a lot of damage, because the reds can be killed by brute force. It's just you have to be a little bit smarter about it. You got to drain the blood reservoir, aka hit them in the gut, and then chop off their head, or just a ton of trauma and that sort of thing. I think that's how the wardens kill them, sans just immolating them with fire or something like that. But
yeah, are they extra susceptible to fire that's not sunlight? I couldn't pinpoint anything about that.
I don't know that it's solidly established, but if there's any indication, Kincaid likes to use Dragon's Breath rounds on them, so it seems like
it's established in general that almost anything supernatural is susceptible to fire on the same level as mortals are. Like he even uses fire. He says he uses fire magic for a very good reason at some point in the books.
And now I want to see him be stuck against someone who's like a fire wizard, specific, like a fire Achenak or something, because that would be fun.
A fire what?
I don't know a better word. Like a spirit of fire,
He did face that salamander. Oh, well, they did.
Yeah.
He didn't.
In games.
But
I thought Kravos was supposed to be, but all that shit happened off screen, so I mean that's part of his insult of Kravos, you second-rate fire caller.
Yeah.
So I love that one.
I had a thought a couple weeks ago watching my husband play The Witcher 3, in which the
Kravos
vampires in there is they're very animal-like and bestial-like. They're very bat-like looking, some of them, and most of them use like echolocation, I think, and they also use cries of sound in order to hurt. But we never see the Reds do that. But they are the most bat-like of them, which I kind of now I'm wondering why we never see them use echolocation.
A lot from the Polish vampire myths.
Makes sense.
I'm trying to think of what they're called.
I don't know. There's
What,
lots
Polish
of them.
vampires?
But like the closest we get.
Nostro. Oh fuck! I've embarrassingly kind of, but I enjoyed them in a weird way. The Vampire Academy books. That's where they use like the Russian Polish vampires there. The name for them. Why can't I remember the name?
Catechins are one of the ones that are the more bat-like ones, and those are Polish myths.
I assume so are Ekimaras because they're another ones in the games.
Yeah. I don't think they're all Polish, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, but it's just interesting. I mean, I guess if we're just talking about different regions that he was pulling from, but we never see bat-like vampires use echolocation. But we do see the Ebes using them like to communicate during hunting, but they're not using location. It just seemed like it kind of touching on it, but not using something that made perfect sense. So let's move on then to the White Court. The Anne Rice types of vampires. It kind of annoys me how similar Thomas can sound to Lestat. Because Lestat's annoying as fuck.
Hey, I've read the first 3 books. I actually enjoyed Queen of the Damned and The Vampire Lestat, like those two, like right after each other.
I read Interview with the Vampire, and I think it was The Vampire Lestat next, and then I tried to get into the 3rd book, Queen of the Damned, and I just got fed up with Lestat, and I couldn't do it. Like 20 pages into it, I just couldn't. Ugh. He's so whiny. Ugh. But the Red Court, or no, the White Court are better in the fact that they're just more lethal instead of whiny. But
White Court is the most human-like of. They're funny the way they are like designed. That they have souls. They have conscience. They are not just wholly evil.
yeah, they're not different creatures the way the red or black seem to be. They still have the half soul that you see in the soul gaze in Blood Rights, and what Thomas was possibly susceptible to in Changes, being that the White Court dies part of him or something.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the human part. Never mind.
So
But,
here's my lack of Dresden knowledge, do we see white court vampires ever be made?
They're born.
They're born. Yeah.
And that's very, very
And
unique.
not yet, but you will soon.
Yeah, they're born, which is like so different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if you paid attention to the thing we did about peace talks, the mothers, if they're human, the mothers have a 50% chance of dying. Just over 50% of them do die. And I don't know if the mortality rate stays the same for the White Court vampire mothers. But we do know that they can do it because Cesarina Malvora is a mother.
Yes. I assume that the female vampires can survive easy. They can just go and get more life force. Like, that's what kills.
It's probably a lot harder on their cattle than it is for them.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of assumptions. I mean, yeah, you're right. Cesarita probably is literally the blood mother of Vittorio, right? So because of the way that he reacts, though it's kind of just said and assumed, whereas you don't do a lot of that with the White Court. They don't tend to just give out that kind of information. But yeah, that is kind of interesting that even the White Court women presumably can breed as well. It's probably more along the lines that White Court in general have like a 1 in 500 chance or whatever the case is to become pregnant in the first place. And then whether you're male or female, it's just harder if you're like to do a pure blood White Court where it's mommy and daddy were both White Court.
Is that even possible?
So, well, that's what I'm saying, because if you go 1 in 500 by 1 in 500, that is a tiny, insignificant chance.
Well, I wonder if it would even work, like, if both of them give the hunger. Like, if the hunger is given off by one parent, it can survive. But if the hunger is given off by both, then it won't. Especially when the whole feeding aspect of lust with them anyway, they'd probably be trying to battle it out anyway, and just, like, zygote rips itself apart.
Right. Maybe. It's an interesting theory. It's not. I mean, I literally just finished White Knight, and so it's kind of fresh in my mind. But it's not something I had fully, tried to address in the context of the vampire lore and everything like that. They are definitely. So the way that I see it is they're humans with the hunger as a parasite basically. So it's sort of symbiotic in the sense that you can pull strength from the hunger, but otherwise, you're there to feed it, 99% of the time. So,
yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. Also, it might have a difference in the fact that which family it is that does it, because lust feeding wraiths will have a different reaction during making babies than like maybe the Malvoras who are causing fear. Maybe they don't give a shit about sex, so it'd be easier for them or harder. I don't know.
I don't know.
Talk about a terrible pregnancy, though. Like, you're already freaking out anyway, so the baby would have plenty of fear energy to draw on, I guess. Now it's the despair. That's the one you really got to watch out for, because talk about postpartum, like shit, man. So I mean, have little
if you're kind of heartless, like the unnamed Papa Wraith, then maybe he just, I don't care if you die, go ahead. But like, you have a higher chance of the mother committing suicide while pregnant.
He's not unnamed. His first name is Lord. It's Lord Wraith.
Lord Wraith, the first of his name.
Right.
Ruler and protector of the realm of the White Court.
I mean, that's taking it a little far, but yeah. Right.
And then supposedly there is a fourth family of the White Court that feeds off of anger, which we don't get to see.
We haven't seen them, yeah.
Yeah. Which is probably a good thing, because fucking Dresden would die, like... It'd be like, oh, you're angry. That's cute. Come here, Cuddlebug. So, yeah, when I read
use that to fuel your magic, how about we just take it all the way?
Right. So,
it's interesting to think now that like the Wraith family feeding on lust are the most thought out because of the idea of protection by having been with someone that you're truly in love with and being loved back. How do you protect against fear and despair and anger in the same way?
Do you think if you're not afraid, it hurts them?
So yeah, I mean the opposite is usually what you want to look for, which love and lust aren't necessarily opposites. So that's kind of interesting. But when you see the Skavis feeding on Elaine, Dresden basically gives her a surge of hope, and then she breaks the spell, as the kind of a way you could take what happens there, and then she blows it out the side of the building. So which is a badass
Yes,
scene.
but is that something that would cause them to get sick, like touching the wrong wedding ring would?
Maybe not. You know, because the Skavis seem to be more surprised than they seem to be like, oh god, it burns us. You know, the lightning burned, but not the hope.
Yeah,
So,
so like a symbol of hope, maybe. Like it, kind of like if people wear a cross or something, and that gives them hope. Maybe that
right.
would do it. Uh, or fear. I'm not sure what you would have for fear. Like I don't know, the blanket. If you're a
I
child
mean,
and blanket makes you feel better, that would make them.
it seems like the whites are wraiths are hurt by symbols of love, and people, if they themselves are like, they're not hurt by touching someone who's in love. They're hurt by touching someone
If
that
they touch
loves
someone
them
who is
and love.
truly in love, they get hurt.
I
Right.
thought it was if they're trying to feed on them versus just touching them. Like there's it
And
hurts them if they.
that is true, but like to most of white court vampires, like Thomas explains, that they feel like they have the right to, they like it's ingrained in them. So just that they touch a mortal, like what's her face, even though she knows it's gonna
Madeline.
burn her, Madeline, her body instinctively right away as she gets touched, she tries to feed.
Right. Well, that's part of the dysfunction of Madeline as well, though, especially Madeline, just because even at the White Court, at the powwow or whatever in the Deeps, she all but murders one of the thralls, which is Laura's like repulsed by that. So even the fact that she does feed like a normal wraith, and that they are cousins to the Thomas and Laura's family and that sort of thing, yeah, you're probably along the right lines where it's kind of instinctual for most of them, whereas the High family, the Wraith family, they try and control that. Because Laura, I want to say Laura like buddied up with Dresden before she kissed him after they've escaped basically by being a human cannonball, and then she's like, "Holy shit, you're still protected? Are you kidding?" That was years ago. So.
It's also interesting that like when we're saying the race feed on lust, but I think any white court can choose the emotion they feed on. Like what's his name?
Madrigal.
Madrigal feeds on this. What is it? Fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He both like fear and lust. Apparently, he likes both. Does that mean that?
Well, he also compared them together, like lust for the little death, which is like what it's called in French for orgasm. Yeah. And then, like, the real death is the fear. That's the lust for real death. And so to him, they seem to be the same thing.
I think it's very individual, but like what I'm trying to get at is that would a wraith, or if a Mavra fed on was on sex like a wraith does, would his anathema be lust, like be love, and would a wraith feeding on fear, would his be hope or something, like an object, like you said, like the blanket or something? It depends on what they eat, not what bloodline they are, because it feels like they can choose what they want.
That would make sense.
And each house has a custom.
Right. Yeah, because it's almost more like, here in America we eat a cup of sugar with every meal, whether intentional or not. But if you go to India, they prefer the spicier foods. It doesn't mean that we can't eat each other's food, but there's definitely a preference.
Be careful
there.
if you go to India and try to eat this food.
Been there, done that. That's why I'm using it as an example. Like I didn't die, so. But
how close were you to death?
I lost weight like it was going out of style, but that was about it. So, but that's kind of. It seems like you might be able to break it down. The one I'm having trouble with is the despair, because you've got like lust for love, for lack of a better word. You got lust for death. You've got lust for power, which would be anger potentially. I just don't know how to, because it's all lust in a sense, but I don't know.
I think it needs to be. Maybe we should talk with Jim about this the next time he's on, if he's actually thought about this. I think it's something that needs to be fleshed out a bit more.
We need more books. Give us a book just about vampires, please.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, like we kind of mentioned with the red court, they can go through thresholds just fine, and they also don't seem to be as susceptible to things
The red
as
court can't go through
Yeah, I
the
was
white
like, you
court.
mean white?
Yeah, I mean white, right?
when we were talking about red court. I shouldn't be podcasting today.
They can't go through thresholds at all.
Right.
Red.
So red court being fully demonic can't cross thresholds. Black
Yes, they
court
can.
being
They can, but they need an invitation. White court can
Sure.
pass without an
Oh,
invitation.
Yes, because they are very human. I mean, in essence, so
Yeah.
they can. Yeah.
yeah.
But are they weak to anything, like specifically? Because you mentioned that Thomas doesn't care about faith things, holy water, garlic.
Love
I think-
objects, for example, but in general,
I mean,
no.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, in general,
Right.
it's kind of. I think it's even mentioned that's kind of their strength. White court, they can draw on a lot of power from their parasite, and they have no inherent weaknesses.
Right. So love, in the Wraith's case anyway, love is the weakness there, but it's not like red court where they like sunlight. They're violently allergic to sunlight. And so, in a way, I think that gives them a strength over the other strains of vampires, but it's also part of their weakness because their main weakness is once you exhaust the hunger, they die, and you can kill them by normal mortal means.
Yeah, they are inherently weaker as well. Like
Right. Like, break their ribs, smash them, shoot them a bunch, cut on them for a while, they will die, whereas, like, the red court and black court, less so. Like red court maybe along the same lines because when they run out of blood they go feral and things like that, but white court seem to be the most human. So sure, they'd whoop your ass, but compared to a wizard they're not even close, whereas red court can definitely beat
They
down
can
on
also
wizards.
do mind magic, though. They are best at the mind magic that they lay into people, and that's
Right.
what's so scary
come
about
hither.
them.
They're come hither. I
Yeah.
guess that's
Also
the
work on
only
the
way
ghost
they could
within.
actually beat a wizard, like with the come hither, if the mind is not disciplined enough.
And
Right.
you can control other wizards with the go thither.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, wizards though generally they're the caveat or the way that's adopted in the Dresden Files is that it's kind of like your defense against the dark arts. Like every apprentice gets taught how to shield their mind because really though that's one of the main attributes of a warlock or a sorcerer is that they do mind magic, and then there's a whole F-ton of monsters that do mind magic, so every wizard's going to get at least a little bit of mental defense. It just happens to be that the older minds are much, much more stubborn, and you find that out in Turncoat. So, yeah.
All
It
right.
also helps in practicing magic in general to have a focused mind.
Right.
So
It does
inherently
require
you're going to
a
be
lot
stronger.
of. When he explains how they basically use a lot of the objects, they don't have to use them, but they use them as like macros,
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise it's really hard to cast spells.
Well, and he quips about it in Small Favor, actually, because I've just started reading that one. But Karen's talking to him about it, and she's like, so why the hell do you do X, Y, Z? And he's like, because it's fucking easy. Like, because if you just imagine everything, you spend a lot of energy for no fucking reason when you could just draw a circle and it does the same thing. So it's a lazy way out, But I like it because that's more evidence the fact that I feel like Butcher did his research and kind of did more things like that. Like I always saw magic as more of a mental task, in that the symbols, the foci, all of that stuff is just, it's to take your mind off of those tasks and focus it. It's like if you were badass enough, you wouldn't need them. And you kind of see that expanded a little bit in Cold Days, because Mav tries to kill him over and over again without any of his foci at all, because he's using them as a crutch. So she's trying to make him stronger by going around that. Anyway, a little bit off topic, I guess.
It's gonna on that before we change back. It's gonna be good when he starts actually having foci again. So I mean, being able not have them makes him stronger, but then having them afterwards, like
Right.
I think he's gonna be stronger from that as well. Like he doesn't have a shield bracelet yet,
but
which I
his
think
staff,
he will make again.
yeah, his staff's also carved from a tree from Demon Reach this time, if I remember right. So
Mhm.
I don't
I'm
know if that
curious how
does
that plays
anything,
out.
but yeah, we'll see.
Well,
But
it's
it's cool.
from a tree from the island that is integrally connected to him now.
Right.
So it's more him. Yay. Okay, let's go to the Black Court. We've still got other stuff to talk about. So I love the way he messed with Bram Stoker's Dracula being the inspiration for him, but also in universe being published by the White Court, not White Council, White Court, in order to eradicate the Black Court. I think that's fun. I loved it.
I like that. I like that as well. It's very good. It also harkens that it's in our world feeling.
Right. Well, and it's the first strong example we have that he's pulling in pretty much all literature, all of it, and he does that a little bit more in Backup as well, if I remember right. That's the one with Thomas, right? And the Oblivion Wars, where it's like
don't mention it.
Yeah, right. The Necronomicon, for example, and just all of those things where it's like take all of it. Like, yes, it's a joke. Maybe it's a joke because this time we published it to sap its power, like the Necronomicon, or sometimes it's serious, like, Dracula. So.
Yeah. So I haven't actually read Dracula. I tried, and I just kind of got bored.
Read it.
I think I read it when I was a teenager.
I watched the movie. Does that count?
No.
I think it's a really good book for when it was written. Like, I thought it would be more stuffy and boring than it actually was. It was pretty. I read it when I was like 14 or something.
Yeah, it was. So I read it a couple of years ago because it's one of the free books you can get from Amazon because you can get a lot of classics that way.
That was my reasoning too.
Yeah, no, it's actually really good.
I guess I just didn't get to the good part yet. It was.
I think you gotta.
Travel.
I might have read it post Dresden, so that might have helped. Whereas it became research at that point instead of just a novel to be entertained with. But like there were tons of things in there that I was like, oh shit, that's really originally from the source. That wasn't something tacked on later in the legend. That's been there from. I mean, Bram Stoker's Dracula is more or less the modern interpretation of vampires because the legend's been around, but this was where we kind of put a pin in it like a dictionary and said we're going to anchor it. We're going to make everything kind of make sense here, in a point. So the whole you can't cross running water. You have to go sleep on a pile of dirt from your grave. Everything. And it's
a good thing that you guys have read it because I had questions.
Okay.
We don't know a whole lot of the Black Court. We know that they are dead, which is why it's infuriating that Mavra could still have a death curse even though she's dead.
Right.
But do you think she actually needs to sleep in a coffin in the ground that she was from?
I don't think that it's a specific. I think he sleeps and they sleep in coffins in Dracula, but I don't think the requirement is the grave dirt, not the coffin. If I remember right.
Doesn't he have to ship in all his dirt because he needs it?
Yeah, he has to ship in the dirt from his home country. Like, I don't know if it has to exactly
to get rid of that. He's got to go home.
Yeah, he has to go home, or he can't rest. And they have to rest. That's like a rule.
Right.
But we don't get to see this because Mavra seems to not have rules. Or at least we never see her go against her rules.
Long enough to see her rules.
Exactly. Well, she showed up at a party and she showed up as a simulacrum to kick Dresden's ass, and then she showed up in person to get a book and to blackmail him. So collectively, we've seen her for like
an hour
or 4 hours. Like, I'm assuming the party was a little bit longer, but yeah, technically, I don't think you've seen her during the day, which in theory, if she's strong enough, you would absolutely be able to see her during the day.
I thought was the thing. They attacked in Blood Rites during the day because of them being asleep, hopefully. But she wasn't.
Okay, so
because older Black
Court is like sunlight specifically. Like,
okay.
But yeah, they do. You're right. You're right, Andreas, that Kincaid does say that some of the older, or maybe it was Dresden, they tell Karen during the prep that some of the older ones don't have to sleep.
And that's also from the original book. Like, I think he even walks around in sunlight, Dracula, in the book at some point.
Yeah, they actually confront him. Van Helsing and the Harkers and everybody confront him during the day, and he's still quite powerful. He doesn't have all of his power, but he was still quite powerful, and he was still able to shape change and things like that. So they're still pretty dangerous. And then the caveat is that the older ones, I guess, do that, whereas the younger ones are still susceptible to sunlight.
Yeah, they go
I
in like a
guess.
coma basically when the sun comes up.
Gotcha.
Like we see that, I think we see that in the book, and also you also see it in the movie. That when you like, they go to a corpse which is just lying there, and like it doesn't react at all until they stake it. It can't react. It's basically in a coma because when it's younger.
So.
And that would be true for the Black Court as well, I assume, since it's written by the White Court specifically with these weaknesses,
right?
Telling people. So that would be true for all young Black Court vampires as well.
Right.
So we hope that Mavra is required to have a plot of dirt. And
right.
Yeah, even the old ones need that.
Sleep through the day, but not really. And then she is uncomfortable by garlic. I don't understand the reasoning behind it, but okay, she doesn't like it, or holy water, and we hope that she doesn't like sunlight, but we don't know.
I don't remember if they even explained it in Dracula why garlic is the thing. I think it's just one of those things where Van Helsing's like, I've been doing this for a little while. Trust me, this works. You know. So I know there's a part where Mina and Lucy, like right around where she's being courted, there's a big deal about garlic even keeping them out of the room and that sort of thing. And so if it's explained anywhere, it's probably there. But it's been a couple of years and I don't remember. So.
I'm also pretty sure that Dracula handily ignores the garlic.
Because he gets to break all the rules, apparently.
Well,
he's really old.
I thought he cheated, and it keeps him out, but it didn't keep his come hither out, basically. So he was able to get Lucy to come to him.
It's been over 10 years since I read it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, that's how I remember it. So it's ironic that you say we know next to nothing about the Black Court, and I think he just doesn't write it because Bram Stoker wrote it. So
do the Black Court have come hither magic?
They have Renfields and thralls. We assume that they can probably do something.
They have some sort of mind magic.
They don't show it as much as the Red Court, though.
Or the White Court.
Well, it's not narcotic like the Red Court spit, and I don't know. Did we ever see the Red Court?
Is physical based, like it's a narcotic.
Right.
They don't have mind magic as such, other than the fact that they have mages, and they could probably have mind magic. But
well, they also had the weird thing that Susan called the kiss of, like, she could feel Harry going under when they were making out. So that's a certain amount of mind magic.
I think that's all related to the spit and just knowing when your prey is ready to be taken type of stuff. But like, I'm talking like in D&D terms, it's domination is how they refer to it, but you literally take over the mind of another creature. And so in in the Black Court, for them, it's like if you make eye contact, that's pretty classically vampire. If you make eye contact with a vampire, he can basically take over your mind and make you do things. The Red Court, I don't remember having anything similar to that.
Of the eye contact thing? Yeah, the Eves tried to do that to Harry, but Harry just kind of says, fuck off.
Okay.
And so did Bianca.
Gotcha. Okay, so yeah, maybe I just don't remember it, but the Black Court, for them, I mean, the Renfields is classic, and there's a dude named Renfield in the book, so that's why they call him Renfield.
That's where the name is.
What was Renfield exactly in the book?
He was crazy. So basically, he's a thrall of Dracula and is promised lives or life or whatever in return for service, and it's one of those classic, like, you're a human thrall, but if you do good things, then I will turn you into a vampire in theory. So the classic, I think it happens in the book a little bit, but the classic sign of it is that when a Renfield comes across an insect, he'll eat it because it's symbolic to him of the little life. He's stealing life from another creature, and that gives him power, because that's how he sees Dracula.
Renfield in Dracula eats a lot of insects because it has blood in it. For him, it's the same as being a vampire, and he really wants to be a vampire, like fanatically so.
You couldn't just have some blood sausage or something?
Well,
because it has to be a living.
And most of the time that you see Renfield in the book, I want to say it was Harker or it was the other guy that I can't remember his name right now, and that sucks. But they went to
See it
see
from
him
the point of view from a doctor who's interviewing him, I think.
Right, yeah, you go into the asylum, and Renfield's in the asylum, and then later on gets broken out by Dracula. So yeah, so he can't just get blood sausage. He's eating the bugs in the asylum,
Oh, okay, that does make more sense.
Yeah.
But I think a critical component of it is that whatever the thing he's eating has to be alive.
Right.
It has to be
And
life's blood.
I want to say, was it? So I want to say Leslie Nielsen or whatever from the oh crap, Naked Gun movies, like the cop movies. He did a Dracula comedy type thing where that in the middle of a conversation, Renfield will just grab a cockroach off the wall and eat it, and they're like, the hell, So it carries over into some other literature as well. But
All right, so we have yet to see someone eating a bug in Dresden.
It even happened.
We haven't seen anyone eat a bug?
I don't think so. We've had Tessa explode into bugs. But
That scene was fucking horrifying.
she almost killed Dresden by force feeding him bugs, but
Okay.
But
Well, that counts as kind of eating.
they tried to avoid the
He
Renfields
does eat. He
because
chews down with the ones that get in his mouth. He says so.
Okay. Okay.
they tried to avoid the Renfields and everybody in Mavra's lair just because first law of magic / it's going to be a really bad paperwork day for Karen to have to explain why she murdered 30 people. So
exactly what almost happened in Deadbeat. Yay! But so Mavra can be invisible. Is that a thing for Black Court, or is it just a Mavra thing?
I think it's a wizard thing. So
It's a weird thing. A Black Court vampire can turn to mist.
yeah, which we haven't seen her do technically, but I think it's Dresden's briefing actually in Blood Rights. He actually says that she's a wizard, and they're like, "What the fuck?" Because they're expecting sorcerer, which means that she can throw down violent magic, but a wizard means versatility. And he's like, "Well, I think she's a wizard. She can at least do a veil. So I've at least seen her throw a veil. Possibly she could do other things. So she's a proper wizard instead of just can use some magic for violence and that sort of thing."
Now I really want to see Mavra go up against Molly with veils. That would be fun.
To be fair, when it comes to Dracula and the books, is that maybe some of his more extra supernatural stuff beyond what we've seen Black Court can do can be because maybe Dracula was also a wizard Black Court vampire.
Yeah, and the Dresden verse, Dracula was the son of Dracul, and he kind of created the Black Court as a kind of teenage rebellion, so says Ebenezer.
He says he went and got him. He went and got himself turned into a vampire as
I
a
thought he
teenage
created
rebellion.
it.
I don't know if he created or was the progenitor or was just
Well,
got turned
if
into one.
I thought
Dracula
he created it too.
is the progenitor, then you should be, versus you went into it.
So how do you create your own court?
Well, his
Well-
father's like a demon. I guess
Right.
he has.
Yeah.
Step 1, be an actual demon. Step 2, bleed a little bit and have people eat that, I guess. Because one of the things about vampires is that they're humans and demons mixed in almost every situation. So they started out as a human, and then the demon part came later. So
Is there a thing that if you kill Dracula, you kill all of them?
in some lore, yes, but I don't think that's
Not
how
in
it
the-
worked in
not in
Dracula.
Dracula.
Yeah.
You free the thralls of Dracula, but you don't do anything else.
Okay. So
Right.
do we see anything that if you kill the progenitor, you kill them all? Because we got that kind of with the Red Court, but it was because Susan was the youngest, not
It was-
because...
It was because of the curse specifically. It wasn't because that's a thing of vampires. So
All right, so that's just something that he either discarded or we haven't seen, because it could be in one of the other ones. Like, we don't know how the Jade Court works. Not really. Or
Right.
any of the other 3 that apparently are out there.
Jade is probably the least likely to function like that. Black would be a pretty strong candidate for that if it's a thing, but it's doubtful, especially because he seems to be taking the whole Dracul is the progenitor and he's really a demon stuck on Earth type of thing. So I doubt it. Let's put it that way.
All right. It'd be cool to see more of both of them, Dracula and Dracula. So even without being a wizard as a vampire and then turned, they can still get the whole prolonged death span, sort of being able to develop magical talent that way, kind of the way the Denarians can, which makes them very annoying. But they don't like garlic or holy water or holy things, but they also cannot cross a threshold even with an invite.
Right. Okay, is that established somewhere specifically?
Yeah, Dresden says it at some point. I don't remember where.
Even with an invite, huh?
Yes, they cannot cross the threshold at all.
Because even demons can cross a threshold with an invite, I thought.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think... when does he say that they can't?
I don't remember. I just know it was a thing.
I don't remember that at all.
I think it was either in Blood Rights or probably White Knight, or he says it. I swear he says it.
It's probably Blood Rights, but I don't remember it. So yeah,
I'm sure someone in the comments will confirm, or
maybe you should get your Wizard Nelson buddy to get you a page number on that one. So
yeah, he probably will. He's awesome that way. And they don't like stakes through the heart because that's a thing, and they're also susceptible to falling turkeys.
Yes,
that was such a good scene. Right. And for my next trick,
anvils.
Yeah.
So there was a question I saw on the subreddit yesterday, which is very good timing for us, I guess, of the possibility of vampires turning each other. Like, one of the Black Courts threatens to turn Lara into a Black Court. It's very interesting that apparently they can do that.
I think only White Court can be turned. They are the only ones human enough to be turned.
I don't know.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't know. This is just me spitballing.
Yeah, Red Court have a demon inside of them that is already on the verge of, or they're already taken over by the demon.
Yeah, Red Court are a demon more correctly, I think. Yeah. I don't know where all that happens because we haven't actually fully seen somebody turn, but at some point the demon just kind of takes you over entirely.
A potential Red Court could probably be turned.
Yeah, like could Susan before she gave in to the bloodthirst.
Before she gave in, exactly.
Yeah,
right.
She could probably, because she's still human.
Right, and I think that was one of the theories is that, or one of the bottom comments, because I did actually read that thread and I was thinking the same thing. I was like, that's convenient. We're going to do that episode. But yeah, I think it has to do with being a measure of being a human. Like, I don't think a Black Court anything could be turned into anything else at that point. I'm skeptical on the Red Court being turned, but maybe a half red.
A fully turned Red Court? No, I don't think so. A half, basically still a human with the potential to become a Red Court if they feed. Could probably be turned to a Black Court. Not a White Court, obviously.
Do they have the demon with them yet before they turn as a Red Court, or?
I think they're kind of like a White Court vampire that hasn't fed yet, so pre-puberty. It's there, and they can awaken it if they feed and kill.
But they get the super strength, and they
get some measure of super strength. They don't get the full. They're not as strong as a full Red Court vampire, as far as I know.
And Susan also got healed by having a little bit of blood, so it's definitely there.
So it makes you wonder, even if she's not fully turned, and even in the White Court case, you might say you're going to turn you, but
it might not work.
It might not work. You might just
longer demon versus demon. Maybe it just tears you apart. Yeah.
Well, you could go the underworld stance, whereas if you mix the two viruses, then you die, type of thing. Because the Nagloshi calls vampires little phage, right? So
yeah, I wanted to get to that too. Plague.
I figured it was a good segue.
Thank you. Yay. So they're all called phages in some way because they eat things, which makes sense. But everything eats things. So is there something? Is there something tying them together about what we call vampires that's anything more than just like they fit the lore? Do you think there's more of a common origin between them or something that gives them?
I think they get kind of lumped into the same category. They might have all different like origins. I'm not sure they have the same origins.
I
Like
mean,
if we are to assume that Dracula created the Black Court, he has no similar origins to the Red Court. It feels like.
yeah.
Or the
I
Black
suppose,
Court.
is there a similar origin of the idea of vampire that
They're all
allows them to all be called it?
parasitic.
So's
And
everything. Everything needs to eat something.
no, but they're parasitic on hosts, much more so than most things we see. They don't exist without a host to start.
Actually,
The
how the
White
fuck did
Court's
Black Court
confusing.
feed?
I don't know. I think he's got to
So
expand more.
yeah, I think Black Court eat people. More. So they don't have fangs in the books. In the Dresden Files, they don't have fangs. I
But
think they just
Butcher
eat
did point
people.
out that fangs was
So
something from Bram Stoker, so he also
I
disregarded
think
that.
they do have
Right.
fangs, but they still just kind of tear, because that's what they do in Dracula as well. And it's not very gentle when they really feed. It's just like, ah,
right,
and they rip open the artery,
right.
and
They're
then they
more
just lap
animal.
in, and then they just go crazy with the blood.
Do
Right.
they just eat the flesh? Do they eat the blood?
They rip off the flesh and drink the blood, like. as far
Right.
as-
Yeah, might as well just eat it all.
They're very
And-
wasteful, these vampires.
So, I guess I'm trying to think of the White Court right now. Are they human souls that give birth to other human souls infected with a White Court demon thing?
Well, the White Court is a lineage, and the way it works is that there is a sort of inner demon attached to their soul, and
That
once
gets
they
passed through birth.
get passed
Right.
through birth, so
We've never seen anybody get infected. We've only seen them be born.
Yeah.
So, and even more so though, like if we're talking about origins and that sort of thing, like Lara is often cited as a goddess, not just in the sense that she's unearthly beautiful, but is the fact that she looks like old marble statues of deities. And so the White Court have probably been around for a really effing long time, whereas like the Red Court, presumably, like they were around for a few thousand years, but not necessarily have they been, well, I guess both of them are around the same time frame, right? Because Papa Wraith would be a couple of thousand years old.
Well,
yeah, that's
okay.
it's confirmed that he's like over several thousand years old.
Right, and
Jim said Papa Wraith is about 2,000 years old, and he had a brother. So, the White Court has been around.
Is Papa Wraith's name Cain?
That
No.
would be very interesting. That would be
No.
fun.
It's not 6,000 years old, kids, even in the Dresden verse. Well, maybe it is, but because there are a lot of things that seem like the cycles are very small and close together. Like when you look at the Dresden Files, because we talk about the differences between like the Greek age and the Norse age and things like that. It's like he only seems to be covering the last 2,000 years or so, and everything past that is kind of, disregarded in a way. So
Sort of. I mean, it would be very, very interesting if the White Court came out of Cain in the way that Canaanites and like Vampire Masquerade and World of Darkness stuff did, and
Right.
then they are a lineage that are susceptible to things like magic holy swords that represent the things that they are very weakened to.
And then Thomas picks up the sword and it kills his demon, and he becomes a knight of the sword. That's a
Yeah.
theory that people have.
That would actually be awesome.
I really
I
want
like
Thomas to get a miraculous.
That's a
That
very
would be an awesome theory. No offense. Like that would make me very happy.
Are we gonna
This-
touch on the Jade Court, by the way?
Yeah, it's just like, but
Is there
we don't.
anything to talk about?
There is a
Right.
little actually, because I looked up an Asian-specific breed of vampires to talk about.
Okay, go for it.
They're very scary. They're called the Penagolans. They're a breed of vampire that like detaches like the upper torso of their head, like up from here and up, and with their organs hanging out, and they float around and feeds on pregnant women and children.
Nice.
And I think it's mentioned that in the book somewhere you really don't want OJ Court to feed on you. And then,
Yeah, he said something in an AMA that it is absolutely horrifying, but he refuses to explain why.
I'm thinking maybe that's this vampire. I can just link this to you guys so you can see.
Right.
Yeah.
Good. That's one I haven't heard of before. So yeah, that's kind of fun. Some of the ones that I had found I like the idea of, but they seem very White Court-esque anyway, because there's a whole lot of it's undead and it floats around and then it feeds on your life force, and it's like that's all vampires, like that doesn't really differentiate them. So, but this one sounds pretty scary.
Yeah, back in the Laurel K. Hamilton forum, apparently he was talking about a Malaysian version of vampire.
That's the
Anita Blake series.
Man, they were so good. Like at first, and they were actually pretty decent, but they got really bad.
They started out bad.
They were okay. They were like pulpy, but they were not.
I don't know how bad they got because I couldn't get past the first book. I tried twice.
I got to like I don't know, like book 10 or something, and like they just get progressively worse.
Yes, but shush. You said something on those forums about a Malaysian type vampire that's apparently like a hair mosquito that attacks infants in their coffins. Can you imagine a hair mosquito vampire?
I'm not sure the imagery I get there, because it's like, are we talking about like a scary daddy longlegs thing, or are we talking about like a flying spaghetti monster, or?
I have no idea.
Because one's a little more terrifying and one's a little bit more comical.
Kind of like a flying facehugger that just lands on you and.
That's pretty terrifying. Yeah.
But the whole there's nothing really tying any of these vampires together, which reminds me of the idea of there's no such thing as a fish. Of all the things that we call fishes, there is nothing that you can strictly say is a defining characteristic of a fish because they're too different. So.
I mean, I still think vampires
are
defined by parasitism.
Apparently, that's not enough because I don't know. It's a common thing in communities of science and like QI and stuff that there's no such thing as a fish.
I think like a lot of these folktales that involve parasitic animals or anything that feeds on the living tends to get lumped or at least eventually classified as a vampiric folktale.
Yeah, it does seem, but some of them they feed on dead people, but people.
Yeah, but dead people is more of a ghoul thing. So
yeah.
I mean, ghouls eat live people too, but they're just not as picky.
Yeah, the problem is like overlap in ghoul versus vampire lore and things.
Yeah, I never got what was too different between Mavra and the ghouls besides magic.
Much more higher functioning.
Yeah. I was just thinking before we end the show, just like when, because we could probably keep talking forever about anything Dresden. I was like hoping we could maybe just quickly run through the few Q&A questions that was put on Reddit yesterday. Like in the end when we're done with vampires.
Sure. But we still got some stuff about vampires.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it up so you don't like, okay, that's it, that's the show for today, bye. And I'm like, actually,
all right. Okay, so if you're still listening to it, we'll do that at the end. I was going to talk about like the specific things about some of the characters like Lara, Thomas, and Mavra because it's the ones we see a bunch. There is a tie-in with the idea of Bram Stoker being published by the White Court and the fact that Lara and Thomas are part of the Oblivion War, but do you think there's something beyond that for both of them? Like, why do you think Lara is doing it?
Self-preservation.
It's a power play. Yeah. Because the Oblivion War is a way to get rid of the old gods, right? And some of these things, like, for example, the Stygian Sisterhood, is that the one from Backup? They're trying to bring around the apocalypse by resurrecting their old god, which for even Lara is a bad day at work, So it's one of those where it's like, the enemy of my enemy type of situations where she's not doing it out of the kindness of her heart to save humanity. She's doing it for self-preservation, maybe.
And do you think Thomas is doing it out of the goodness of his heart to save humanity?
He's a good person. I think he is doing it because he believes it has to be done.
I don't think Thomas's motivations are so simple in a sense. Like, I think part of it is he would probably do it out of the goodness of his heart, but I think higher up the chain wasn't he doing it because Lara manipulated him? So.
And Lara needs to cut that shit out.
Good luck with that.
It'll be fun.
That'll be the day she stops eating through sex. So.
Yeah. When she picks up the other sword.
Yeah, right.
And at the end of the day that Thomas decides to kill her, that'll be so much fun to read about. What do you guys think
He
that she's
loves
doing
her.
for control? What are her plans in motion? Because I want to speculate about that because it's fun.
Like what's her end game?
Power. More of the same.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you think she wants to like? I don't think she wants to be public because the idea of Cat's probably wanting to be behind the scenes, but they already have like a porn empire. Are they trying to like get more? Are they trying to take over countries?
I think they have a finger in a lot of pies.
Well, they already took over the U.S. Navy, apparently, according to your theory. So.
That's fucking a lot.
But so one of the things that Jim Butcher mentioned in the interview with us was that Laura got a little bit of taste of what Daddy Wraith was doing, and now she's freaked out and getting power for the same reason. So it seems like she sees down the line that the apocalypse is coming, and she's trying to make sure that she and hers are protected as much as possible during that. So she actually does have a motivation. We just haven't been introduced to it fully.
Yeah.
As to the Oblivion Wars and the old gods, that's we're talking outsiders and Leviathans, kind of like what's his name, that author with the Cthulhu.
Lovecraft.
H.P. Legend. Yeah.
That's the kind of thing where old gods and outsiders, they're both like Cthulhu type, outside of this reality thing, right? They're the same. That's what the Oblivion War is about.
Not fully, though, because, I mean, that's part of it, but there are other old gods. It's kind of a introduction into the Dresden verse cosmos altogether. Like, for example, the Norse almost went the way of the dodo, but they're cheating in the sense that they're, being professional wizards or Santa Claus, or, sorry, I said wizards, I mean wrestlers, or Santa Claus or something like that. Whereas some of these old gods weren't so clever. They just persist through oral tales or written word and rituals and that sort of thing. In some cases, like the Necronomicon, it seems to water down the ritual, or at least that's what Dresden thinks, whereas what Lara and the people fighting the Oblivion Wars see it as is that it actually just fuels the fire, so to speak, and keeps them around. Ivy being the super weapon of the Oblivion Wars, so...
That's what that was what the archive was created for, right? That's to spearhead the Oblivion War.
Right.
I think that's mentioned somewhere. I think he says it in a Q&A or something. He even says the Oblivion War probably won't be brought up really in the Dresden Files, but it's happening out there.
Right. It kind of can't, though, because when Dresden knows, that's a step backwards, and it might even be a huge step backwards, because it might be even worse that wizards or people with power know shit than just regular you and me, type of stuff. So Thomas will never really bring it up because the Oblivion Wars, the old god has to pass out a memory, and then the archive has it for a couple of 100 years, and then once she's certain that it's gone, she'll delete it, and then it's done. So
I find it really frustrating. I think you said that. It's like I laughed a little, and it's like, where you said something with Dresden believes that. Where I just got to thinking, it's so frustrating in a way that in the Dresden Files, it's from Dresden's perspective, and we get things basically described as fact because it's from his point of view, but he's wrong. Like he's not right about the thing he's presenting as fact.
Great part about an unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
That's what's great.
Unreliable narrator, and that's the best part of all of the other side stories, that you get to see other people's point of view of it.
I love how you get the point of view that, like, Dresden is, like, by the seat of his pants. Everything he does, he's, like, barely getting through it, and he's constantly feeling like he's overwhelmed. And then
when you see it from another person, like,
this is a badass demigod who's literally unbeatable. You just don't realize how mortal he sees himself. Or how
close some other things were. Like, they don't see or know how close it was. Like,
yeah. So we're gonna go back to vampires for a minute, and then we'll get to the Q&A, like Andreas asked. Like, the thing about Mavra that has pissed me off is that she seems to have known exactly what was happening in Deadbeat to the point that it's just really, really suspicious. Do you think she was hanging out there because she knew it was going to go down? And if she did, how did she know it? How did she know it in general? And did she get the blackmail with that in mind or for something else?
I always thought she did it intentionally and had it in mind the whole time, but
I don't know if she had it in mind. Maybe she did.
I mean,
So
that's
you-
like
Certainly seems-
such a huge. She had the
So-
perfect blackmail to get the perfect thing she wanted.
Sure, but she's also stupidly patient. She saw an opportunity, So the way that I see it is that she got the pictures knowing that she could squish Karen Murphy and Dresden at any point she wanted to. And the only reason why she didn't do it physically is because she could leverage them for other things. And then the word of Kemmler was just such a huge fucking thing that she was ready to throw her trump card down for that.
So how did she know
someone-
about the word of Kemmler?
Everybody knew except for the White Council. Fucking Marcone's people knew about it, but the White Council didn't. So
Well, that's because Marcone's person was involved, but
right. How did he get involved? He just found it in an estate sale, really? He just found
Yes.
the most dangerous book in the world.
He stole it or something.
So how old
Right.
is Mavra?
about
She's
600, he said.
About
600? So does she keep blackmail in every powerful wizard she comes across?
Wouldn't you?
I mean, it's just when you're that old and that patient, it seems funny that you'd pick out Dresden as someone you'd want to get blackmail on.
Well, she already tried to
Oh.
squish him in Grave Peril, so it
Right.
makes sense.
True.
Work
Yeah.
and
But she had to have something in mind.
well, I still think that she did it because she wanted Dresden to get more powerful, and she's going to make him do something in like book 19, apparently, when we're going to see her next.
I
Is she
think
going to set off the apocalypse?
That would be book 20.
the bigger question is why does she
Alpha.
keep hanging around Chicago, not why did she blackmail Dresden. She does seem to know something's up because 600 years old and you're barely anything, but you're going to set up shop right where Dresden can find you and squish you. Like he's going to come down on you.
If she
the
is
whole
Dresden's a threat.
Sure, right, but she set up that scourge in his city. She had to know.
You think she set up the storage that was from Nazi times?
No, Scourge.
Oh, Scourge storage.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry.
That's what a gathering of backward vampires are called. The Scourge.
Yes.
Right.
But, okay. I lost my train of thought.
But that got her
So-
the blackmail.
But
I mean,
that's implying that was the whole point of setting it up.
She must have known what was going to happen.
Theoretically, though, she could have, though, because I think even Gravane and Cowell talk about the fact that, it's been a long journey getting to where they're going to do the Dark Hallow, and they're not trying to screw it up in the last day. So maybe she was a player the whole time and knew it, and so she set up the blackmail, a year in advance, because she knew what was coming down the pipe. It's possible. I wouldn't throw it out there. It seems to fly in the face of Occam's razor just a little bit. I think she just got lucky in some ways, and also because the Dresden Files pretty much runs on luck. So.
I mean,
Right. I mean,
I don't
Mavra
know.
seems like such an awesome
Certainly
bad guy.
calculating bitch.
All right, let's
It's
get to
obvious.
the Q&A, and then we'll finish out because we're getting kind of long for this episode. So,
Because we're having so much fun.
Because
Oh,
vampires
yes,
are
that's
awesome.
Right?
yeah. So the Q&A that I've looked at is, okay, so Bob has been around since around the time that Mab has ascended. So he's about 1,000 years old. Supposedly, the phrasing made it sound like Bob could have even been in the vicinity when it happened, which would make sense if Etienne the Enchanter was really powerful at the time and was just in the same place that everyone else was, apparently, at the Battle of Hastings. Assume it happens.
Everyone was at that party, the Battle of Hastings.
Yeah.
Anyone who had a name, was anybody, was there.
Tons of shit seemed to happen there. I want to know everything. So someone asked, apparently, if Map got impregnated by Harry becoming a knight, and Jim thought it was crazy, crackpot theory, and eventually became amused by it because no, she did not. So he says.
Well, now that he's gotten amused by it, then maybe he'll make it canon.
Yeah, somebody gave him an idea.
Yeah,
We're stuck now. So, you wanted to do a spin-off
Yes.
featuring Goodman Gray, tentatively
Yes.
called Monsters LLC.
It's also the top comment from me there is, I never knew I wanted something so much until I just saw it right there. I was like, yes, give me that.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. That is on par with the Brienne and Tormund ship in Game of Thrones. That was awesome. Never knew I wanted it so badly.
Just from Tormund's point of view.
Goodman Gray book sounds awesome. Like, can you
It
imagine how great that book will be? I think it will be pretty funny.
I'm surprised that he'll actually be willing to do something like that. I mean, if it was in Goodman Gray's point of view, because I thought he had the same problem that Mouse does, is that Mouse knows too much. It can never be in his point of view because of it. So.
What was... Oh, crap. What book was it? Oh, right. Mistborn. When every chapter from Kelsier's point of view was, no, I can't think of that right now. It's too important to the plot line later.
I forgot.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say,
it doesn't always work well.
Goodman Gray is a spook. Just because the story's from his point of view doesn't mean he doesn't have other terrible knowledge inside his head. Whereas Mouse is probably more like Dresden, where he's going to be like, don't do that, you idiot. It has to do with the end times, so.
Yeah. I desperately want to get into Mouse's head because he knows so much. I get all my answers. See,
I just want more actual communicate, not from his point of view, but I really want more communication with Mouse so we can talk a little bit with him.
Yeah. That was so much fun in Changes. So Jim has usually said that he wants. Say again.
Will we get Mouse points of view in his children's series?
He hasn't said that.
I don't think so.
Yeah, it would be Maggie and another kid written by his sister. So I don't think Mouse gets a point of view. He's just going to be there and be awesome.
I don't know, but as a kid's book, a dog's point of view could be so much fun to work with.
Or he could just be an awesome dog, which is already awesome.
But if it's a kid's series, you can avoid having him think the overarching questions and just focus on the topic.
Who's a good boy? I'm a good boy.
Right. So Jim has usually said that he wants Fassbender to act as Harry Dresden, but he's changed his mind and now it's Hiddleston. But I still think Hiddleston should be Thomas because he works very well in that role.
No. We all know who Thomas should be.
I think Hiddleston's perfect for it, but we should get into that as well.
Perfect for either one of them. Hiddleston can do it.
Ian Somerhalder is Thomas.
Ooh. Why is Ian Somerhalder the first name that pops up when I type in Ian?
Because Google is watching you.
Apparently, because I don't know who he is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that is Thomas.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I think Hiddleston is better because I'm actually very impressed with Hiddleston's acting when he's not doing Marvel shit.
Ian is actually a pretty good actor as well.
Do you want the better actor for Dresden or Thomas?
I think Thomas needs to be done right or else he could ruin the movie.
So yeah, go with...
Nah,
I don't
whatever.
know.
I don't really buy Hiddleston as Dresden, though, because I haven't...
Not tall enough.
Well, there's that, but I haven't seen him convincingly get his ass kicked and be snarky about it. I mean, sure, Loki and in the Avengers, I get you, but, like, it wasn't the right... It didn't... It's
Isn't
not
that
Dresden.
all Loki
obviously.
ever does?
Sure, in a sense, but it's a little too goofy. I think
Sure.
that's what it is. He
That's
doesn't
the
ever...
tone of the movie.
Like, he's got some gravitas to him, but he doesn't have, like... I don't know. He doesn't sell me on Dresden. So
I mean, he's doing what the movie's calling for him to do at that point. Well,
sure.
we haven't seen him do serious.
I've never really thought who I want to be Dresden. I can't.
Who would be? Who else do we have that's important?
We already had a casting episode. We're gonna go back to it at some point. This is not a casting episode. I just wanted to say.
As long as we can all agree that Ian Somerhalder is going to be Thomas.
Nope, Hiddleston's better for
No,
Thomas.
just no.
So,
Moving
is it Merlin?
on. Okay. Somebody asked if the grumpy British dude in Demon Reach is Merlin, and Jim evaded by saying that someone had already correctly guessed the identity, but he would say no more, which is very annoying because there's so many possibilities out there of people would already have said.
I mean, that's why he said it.
Yes. and it's exactly what he said on talking to us. It's like, yeah, you got that tiny little bit right, but everything else is wrong. It's just put all of the tiny bits right, then you get the entire picture. But we don't get to know what the entire picture is, so we don't know what the bits are right.
I don't think it's
if
Merlin,
he would
but
just put out, I'm not. I mean, the books are getting. I think the quality is like around book 7 or 8. Like they are all, or even 4 or 5. They're all really good books. But I feel like he's still increasing just a little bit in quality every time. With the books.
The more you write, the better you get. So
yeah, but
why?
It's just I just want more books. Like, can we get them faster? There's gonna be 24 books or something with a trilogy, and it's just like.
And we've got like 10 years left, right?
I can't wait for that.
Right, but
So-
I think we have reached the end of this episode, unless anything else has to say.
I was just going to go on and on about if it's Merlin or not, but
Go ahead, talk about it for a minute, and then I'll shut you up.
It's not Merlin, but yeah.
I don't think it's Merlin because he's too. He doesn't sound like he'd be from Merlin's era. Though, doesn't Merlin exist in like all stages of time when he makes Demon Reach?
5 stages of time at least.
5 stages at least. So that
Merlin-
implies that he might have knowledge of the future and know.
Merlin
how to
lore,
do it.
like original Merlin lore, is like Merlin ages backwards through time.
But
Merlin
we're going to
ages
have an
backwards.
Arthurian episode. I just don't know enough about it already. So
That could be a good one with Dresden because he does tie in a lot of it.
yeah, I need to really research that. So that's something
Codify
that's
it,
going to
yeah.
come up whenever I get off my ass enough to do it. So I think that's the end of this episode. And everyone can just say bye.
Bye.
Oh,
Bye.
I
Wait,
not
no,
yell,
no,
I
No,
didn't
no
plug
bye, no
anything.
bye.
Fucking Broken Jars at XYZ is where you can find absolutely everything. And there's Shylock's Gaming that he was totally going to yell at me for not doing anything. And then there's 42. They're currently taking a break for the summer because they've been doing it for like 2 years. And then there's Great Scott and High Fantasy, which is me and Colin and Jacob. And you should totally watch it because we have a bunch of fun talking about a bunch of books, including the Dresden Files.
We should be catching up again soon.
Yeah, we'll be doing it next week. And then there's...
Let me know when you do a Mistborn episode. I might watch that.
I've already been railing about Mistborn a lot.
Yeah, we drag in a lot of them.
Well, can I just ask you, Alex? Do you prefer the old or new version of Mist, like the one in cowboy time,
I
industrial
haven't-
times, or?
I haven't read any of those. I've just read the
Oh my
basic
god, they're
in
so
industrial.
good.
I've only
Oh,
read
we should get
the
on that.
original Alloy Law, but I did enjoy it.
Well, we have also
get there.
Dangerous to Go Alone, which is about nerd culture, I think. And I think that's it. And now everyone can say bye, and I'll end the podcast.
Everyone say bye.
Goodbye again.
Bye.